if you are the parent of a senior right now, you are in what I call financial aid season. So if you're following along with the process of applying to colleges, we are really almost at the midpoint of getting applications submitted. In fact, it is October, and I have some students who are completely finished with submitting applications already. And often that means we turn our attention to scholarships and financial aid. Financial aid naturally sort of starts at this time of the process because the FAFSA, which is the form required to submit for qualifications for federal financial aid, opens on October 1st. So typically starting in October, families are getting on the ball and filling out the FAFSA and getting that filed for the process. There's also a second form that some colleges require called the CSS Profile that is similar but slightly different than the FAFSA. It is mostly required by private colleges, but there are a few state schools on the list of schools that are requiring it. But for today's purposes, really just focusing more broadly on the question that I often get asked, especially about the FAFSA, is should we file it if we are pretty confident we're not going to qualify for any type of federal aid? And it's a great question. And I understand that there can be just the time commitment of doing the work to file the FAFSA, although in its newest form, it is much simpler. So if you had a student who went through this process 2 or 3 years ago, there has been a massive simplification of the process. So that helps a lot in terms of just the time commitment that it takes. It also has shifted, if you're not familiar with this, to requiring what we call the prior year tax return. So if we are filing the FAFSA right now, you need 2023 tax returns for that. So as you're thinking about pulling all of this together, again, the question may come up, but if we're not going to qualify for anything, why do we bother? So here are a couple of reasons that I share with families about why you may still want to do it. The first one is actually because you never know if circumstances could change. While certainly no one wishes that, none of us can predict the future, and things can go sideways at some point for various families. Again, don't even like to speak it into the universe, but it can actually happen. And so if you've already completed the FAFSA early in the process, you have it on file, it can then be something that is updated or that the college could use to make an adjustment to an amount of an award. So it will just simplify the process by having it already done, as opposed to, again, if something catastrophic happens, the last thing any family wants to try to think about is, oh my gosh, now we need to really scramble to make sure college is covered for the coming year. So just food for thought, having it on file can be there as a bit of an insurance policy, so to speak. The other thing the reason a family might consider doing it, because you must have it filed if you have any interest in taking out federal student loans. So that is the only way that those will be offered, and so FAFSA must be filed in order to accept a federal student loan. I understand there's a lot of negative thoughts around student loans. Some families are into it for a certain amount and put a cap on it to try to make it manageable for the student once they graduate. Others want to avoid them altogether. Some people take the full amount, and wherever your family lands, just know that the FAFSA is part of that process. They're going to require you to file that in order to qualify for federally subsidized and unsubsidized student loans. So keeping that in mind. The third reason, which is far more obscure but does happen every so often, is that some colleges want the FAFSA on file to award scholarship dollars. So let me make a clarification quickly about the difference between scholarships and financial aid. Scholarships are awarded based on some form of merit or talent. So academic awards, athletic awards, those kinds of things are considered scholarships. Financial aid is given once it is determined that there is a need. So If you have a need as determined by filing the FAFSA, that is need-based financial aid, different from scholarships. So you may be asking, why would a college want to have the FAFSA on file to give out scholarship dollars? Well, there are lots of varying reasons that may happen. A lot of times it is so they can just kind of get a bigger picture of what a family's contribution looks like and what the FAFSA will say is the amount that a family is able to pay. So they may be adjusting their awards slightly based on that. But sometimes they just want there to also be some skin in the game. Like, having done it shows that you are looking at all sorts of avenues for money as opposed to just expecting that money will come from the college. Remember the bottom line in all of this. Colleges are businesses, and so they are working hard to manage their own funds in terms of scholarship monies, and they have to look at a lot of different angles to make sure that they're being good stewards of their money. That's a good way to say that. So again, thinking about the reasons why you may still want to consider filing the FAFSA, those would be the three big ones. In case of an emergency, in case you want to consider opting into federal student loans, and because there could be a school on the list that requires it for scholarship money. In terms of that last bit, if you are curious about that, it is always best to call the financial aid office directly at the college to ask if that is any part of their process, if the FAFSA is required for scholarship awarding. You can't necessarily Google it and learn it about every single school that might be doing it. So again, if you have questions about that, contacting the financial aid office is a great step. And on that note as well, I will add, the financial aid offices at these colleges are filled with experts who do this kind of work around aid and scholarship money every day of their lives. And if you have questions, simply pick up the phone and have a conversation with someone at a school where your child is applying, because that is the best way to make sure you're maximizing what needs to be done on their behalf and not missing any steps that might be in the process. And not that there are a lot of hidden steps, but I want to put it out there that it's a resource for the financial aid, or that the financial aid office can be a resource in this process if you have questions. I hope this helps just clarify a few things about why maybe it makes sense to go ahead and file the FAFSA. If you have additional questions, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to help.